Upon witnessing a 2-year-old child's determination to adopt a frail pit bull from the shelter, her mother had an important decision to make. The dog's appearance had resulted in total rejection from everyone, but would the young girl be able to save it from a terrible end? Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. Audra had always been aware of her daughter's compassionate nature, but watching her choose the shelter's most forlorn and unpleasant-smelling dog made her question her daughter's judgment. She had assured little G she could pick any pet she desired and was baffled by her choice out of all the adorable puppies available. Right next to it was a German Shepherd puppy with incredibly kind eyes, yet her daughter's attention was fixed solely on the ailing pit bull. Audra's reservations about the pit bull that G was so eager to adopt stemmed from two concerns. Firstly, it was a pit bull. She strived to keep an open mind, yet was aware of pit bulls being perceived as robust and highly protective canines. She doubted that she could ever feel at ease leaving her young daughter alone with such an unpredictable breed. What if it accidentally hurt her during play? A gentle bite could easily injure G's fragile fingers, and what would happen if the dog became aggressive towards visitors? She considered how it would reflect on her as a parent to have such an intimidating animal in her home. Secondly, the dog's health was visibly poor. It emitted a foul odor and it had constant discharge from its eyes and nose, along with several bald spots. Frankly, it was far from the adorable dog she had pictured while driving with G on what she thought would be a transformative day in their lives. Audra exhaled deeply. Her daughter had been longing for a dog ever since she could speak, with "doggy" being her very first word. Her fascination began after seeing the neighbor's golden retriever lounging on its porch, instantly deciding she needed a dog of her own. Audra had initially dismissed the idea, stating G was too young for such a responsibility, but now, at 2 years old, G had become quite self-sufficient, leaving Audra without excuses. Deep down, Audra also cherished the idea of a gentle presence in their home. A dog would not only be a steadfast friend and guardian for her daughter, but also introduce joy and energy to their home and encourage them to spend more time outdoors. Yet, this particular dog did not appeal to her. "What seems to be the issue with it?" she inquired of the shelter staff, trying her best to hide her repulsion. They informed her that the distressed pit bull was suffering from a severe case of mange and battling a respiratory illness as well. Despite being on medication, the dog struggled to recover due to its lack of vigor. Sadly, its life had been anything but joyful prior to this point. It turned out that this pit bull was the offspring of two highly regarded breeders in the canine world. The owner had high hopes of selling her for a significant sum, but instead, he was left with a frail pit bull, marked by an overly broad nose and a fragile coat. She was deemed unsellable and heartlessly abandoned as soon as she was old enough to leave her mother. A kind-hearted individual had taken her in, yet sadly, he passed away shortly after. His relatives refused to care for the dog, leaving her to be handed over to an animal shelter. She was quickly adopted, but was returned after just a week because she seemed too sad and kept whining. The shelter staff had tried to explain that she was mourning the loss of the only person who had shown her kindness. However, the family was unwavering. They desired a cheerful dog, not one engulfed in sadness. This rejection only worsened her spirits. Before we continue, like this video to help us reach 10K likes and subscribe to our channel. The distressed pit bull was scared of her surroundings and too timid to interact, frequently falling ill. Eventually, the shelter's veterinarian discovered she had a chronic illness requiring surgery. Unfortunately, the shelter couldn't afford the surgery, and no one was willing to adopt a dog that came with such hefty medical costs and uncertain recovery. Consequently, she faced constant rejection, and by her first birthday, she had spent most of her life within the confining walls of her kennel, seemingly unable to break out of her withdrawn state. Shelter employees were growing increasingly concerned that she might spend her life in that cage, aware that another illness could tragically place her on the euthanasia list. That's when G and her mom entered the scene. The instant G saw the pit bull, she stopped and indicated concern for its health, surprising her mother. "How did you know she was unwell?" Audra thought, puzzled. The only explanation seemed to be that G noticed the dog's symptoms and inferred she was ill. Touched by her daughter's empathy, Audra pleaded with the shelter to let the dog out for her daughter. A shelter employee opened the kennel, trying to encourage the scared pit bull to come out, but the dog trembled uncontrollably at the approach of a person, eliciting Audra's sympathy. As another worker hesitantly approached with a leash, witnessing the dog's distress at her colleague's attempt, they didn't expect G's next action. Undeterred by the dirt on the shelter floor, the girl knelt down, disregarding the state of her fancy dress. She cautiously extended her hand towards the dog, maintaining a slight distance from its face. The goal was not to scare the pit bull. Audra held her breath as the dog's nose moved closer to her daughter's hand. Despite the pit bull's frail appearance, its potential to react aggressively remained. Just as Audra was about to pull G away, the dog gently touched her fingers with its tongue. G was thrilled, laughing as she allowed the dog to sniff and lick her hand. To her surprise, the pit bull affectionately pressed its head into the girl's hand, enjoying the strokes from G. The shelter staff watched in wonder. Their efforts to make the dog more sociable hadn't been very successful, but in just moments, G had managed to connect with the pit bull. Seeing the opportunity, the staff member with the leash moved closer, cautiously attaching it to the dog's collar. Though initially tense, the pit bull calmed down when given space, looking comfortable with G holding the leash. Encouraged, G gently led the dog out of its cage. As they walked, the dog appeared nervous but gained confidence with G's support, who paused periodically to clean its eyes and nose with her dress. Audra didn't mind the mess. The sight was too endearing. "Mommy, I choose this one," G declared, engaging with the dog. With that, Audra, captivated by her daughter's compassion, realized she was going to bring home the pit bull. She approached the shelter counter, amused at the staff's surprise that the dog was being adopted. Audra discussed the necessary surgery, costs, and immediate care for the dog, all the while speaking as if the dog was already part of the family. However, adopting wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. Shelters ensure animals are placed in caring, suitable homes, which requires a screening process for potential owners. Audra appreciated the shelter's diligence and arranged for a home visit the next day, ready to leave with G. Yet, G was hesitant to leave her newfound companion. Witnessing the dog being put back into its cage and shaking, G couldn't hold back her tears. "Puppy unwell, Mama," she wept. "Need help. Go home." Audra's heart shattered witnessing her daughter's anguish. She stooped down to her level, attempting to make her understand that the dog would join their family the next day, after the compassionate shelter staff confirmed they were an ideal match for it. She emphasized that this measure was for the dog's best interest, but G was inconsolable. "Go home," she sobbed, gesturing towards the pit bull. Meanwhile, the dog too was whining softly. Audra, feeling sorry, glanced at the shelter workers, ready to lift her daughter and leave forcefully. Yet, the understanding she saw in the staff's eyes suggested that wouldn't be necessary. They too were moved by the immediate connection between the girl and the dog, opting to slightly adjust their policies. G displayed remarkable tenderness and empathy towards the pit bull, compelling the staff to act generously. So, a volunteer among them offered to inspect their residence there and then to ensure it was a nurturing environment for the dog. Audra, relieved, informed G that the dog would indeed be coming home with them. Another team member hurried to release the pit bull from its enclosure. The girl ran to the dog at once, holding it in a loving hug, and it calmed down instantly, no longer trembling. To the dog, G became a source of security, feeling protected only in her arms. At Audra's residence, the shelter worker closely inspected each room. Ultimately, he assured Audra her home was perfectly suitable for the pit bull. The house was already child-friendly, devoid of any sharp edges or high steps that might endanger the sensitive animal. Before departing, Audra requested the contact for the shelter's veterinarian. It was crucial for her to arrange the dog's medical procedure promptly to alleviate its suffering and, between us, to prevent it from sneezing across her floors. That evening, Audra contacted the veterinarian, scheduling the surgery for 3 days later. During this period, G shone as an exemplary caretaker. She washed the pit bull on her own, eradicating the unpleasant odour and ensured it ate precisely as recommended by the shelter. Nevertheless, she couldn't resist secretly offering the dog numerous treats. She christened her Scarlet, pledging eternal companionship and support. On the day of surgery and in the days that followed, Scarlet appeared transformed. She required time to recuperate and combat the infections plaguing her, but now she seemed equipped to contend with her future. She had found a genuine companion in little G, who became her beacon of hope and strength. 6 months on, Scarlet was entirely transformed. The once dishevelled and unhappy dog with a cold and crusty eyes was no more. Her coat had regrown, fuller than before, her eyes sparkled, and her tongue was constantly out, ready to gently touch her young human's hands. With G's supportive presence, she began to befriend the neighbour's golden retriever, the very dog that had motivated G to adopt one. Audra was filled with immense pride for her daughter's decision. She had rescued a desperate dog from a grim fate, and in exchange, she had found a lifelong companion. Previously, Audra had viewed pit bulls as intimidating animals, but Scarlet proved to be the kindest creature she had ever encountered, and her protective nature over G deepened Audra's affection for her. Their life was now complete, a transformation driven by her daughter's kindness towards an animal in dire need of affection. Such a heartwarming conclusion. Would you consider taking in an ill dog, knowing the medical expenses involved? What words of encouragement would you offer to little G and her mom? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section, and remember to hit like, subscribe and ring the notification bell for more exciting stories. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.